Welcome to the July 17th meeting of the Oak Point City Council. If you please silence your cell phones. The meeting is called to order at 6 p.m. Every council member is present with the exception of Deputy Mayor Pro Tem Kowicki. He just notified us that he has a work emergency and he will not be able to come tonight. We have a quorum and we will start with the invocation. Our gracious Father, thank you for our beautiful city of Oak Point. We pray for your peace and protection for all our residents and staff. Guide us to be architects of peace instead of agents of conflict. Show us how to be very good stewards of our taxpayer dollars. In God we still trust. Amen.
Amen.
The Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And the Texas Pledge.
Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Thank you. Agenda item number 4 is a presentation of a Citizen Bravery Award.
I'm not going to be too long. I'm going to just kind of briefly touch on what happened. Lieutenant Sippel will kind of get into the details as to what occurred. But I just wanted to say that Ms. Bailey's actions on the day of the incident are feeling we need more people just like her. She took time out of her day that she didn't need to stay and assist with an accident, and it just helped us out overall as a city. So I'll let Lieutenant Sippel take it from here.
Sorry. I'm Lieutenant Sippel. Like Chief was saying, it's kind of few and far between we get somebody to stop and help us. So I wrote a memo to Ms. Bailey. Would you like to step up here, Ms. Bailey? So Ms. Bailey was on her way home from work that day. So Ms. Bailey, so on June 15th, 2024, at about 18:03 hours, which is just after 6 p.m., a traffic accident occurred at FM 720 and Woodridge Drive. I was one of the first responding officers on scene and observed two vehicles that had collided with one another. I approached the first vehicle, which was occupied by a female driver, and she had a deep traumatic wound to her hand and wrist. I observed you tending to the injured driver, wrapping her wrist and applying pressure to stop the bleeding. You do not have any protective gear on, and were putting the needs of an injured citizen before your own. I asked you if you'd like me to take over patient care, and you denied, stating that you were okay. Together, we prepared the injured driver for medics, as I knew she would need to be transported via ambulance. Due to your assistance with the injured driver, I was able to tend to the other injuries for the other parties. You stayed with the injured driver until medics arrived, and I was able to gather all injured party status and relay that to responding medics and request additional ambulances. You were essential and played an exceptional role in this incident. We as a department cannot thank you enough for stopping to assist with patient care. On your way home from work, you stopped and answered a call answered the call to assist those in need. On July 9th, 2024, I had met with you at work. She works locally here, and found out that you were in contact with the injured driver. I believe she was supposed to be here, but she's not here yet. But they continue to stay in contact and making sure her healing process is going well. So we'd like to present you with a Citizen Bravery Award and a Department Challenge Coin for your actions. We want to thank you again for your actions and kindness. And I just found out from Ms. Bailey that, like I said, she stays in contact with her. She's just following up on, she's getting a new car and just really just being a kind citizen and helping out and staying in constant contact with her.
That's great.
Thank you again, ma'am.
You can't read again. Thank you so much for being a good Samaritan. We're so blessed for your help. Thank you. We appreciate you.
Ma'am. Thank you, I appreciate it.
You're very welcome, Officer.
And thank you for coming tonight and bringing your son. That's great. Thank you. Agenda item number 5, items of community interest. Joni?
I don't have any that I can think of. We had a fair turnout for Freedom Fest. I think everybody had a good time. It was awfully hot, so we did our midst of people as usual. And then we don't have any more events until fall,
Great.
so everyone enjoys their summer.
Thank you, staff, for all you did to make Freedom Fest a good event. Although it was a smaller group, it was a very nice group. Everyone had a good time. And people even came up to me and said they were so thankful they weren't long lines for like the children's balloons and the other activities. So it worked out great. And I also want to thank staff for coordinating the contractor for brush pickup. That was great. And I think we're almost done. aren't we?
We're getting close.
That's great. Okay, agenda item number 6, public input. I don't have a public input card, but did anyone ask to speak at this time?
There was one gentleman that said he was going to, but then he emailed back and said he couldn't make it after all.
Okay. Agenda item 7, presentation and discussion of the following reports. Financial report for June 2024. Council, do you have any questions?
I have a comment. As most people are aware, David Mosley and others, most people are aware, I tend to follow our revenue sources, budget projections versus actual on our major revenue sources, which are property taxes, sales tax, bank fees, permits, licenses, and fines. Historically, we had a problem kind of budget for permits because we don't have any houses to build, primarily. Well, anyway, our permits are down, I do spreadsheet, the tracking spreadsheet, permits are way down, but on the other hand, the franchise fees are way up. So the net for the year is we're up $68,000 on our budget, which is not a lot of money, but it's better positive than that. The bottom line is we're doing all right in terms of permits, so other people wondering about that. Any questions?
No, thanks, John.
Got 3 spreadsheets, I'll look at it later.
Municipal court report for June of 2024. Any questions? The permits report for June 2024. Department of Public Safety, DPS report for June 2024. Chief, would you like to make any comments?
If you look at our stats, property crime, drug crimes, traffic accidents, arrests, we're actually down, which is good. I've heard some speculation as to the officers aren't really doing anything, doing their job. I disagree. I think that we're actually tackling issues that we've had in the past, and I think the guys are doing a great job out there.
Thank you. We appreciate all that y'all do.
So, a question.
Go ahead.
So I keep seeing reports, on news reports, police departments using drones and they love them. Have we been looking into that at all?
I don't think we're there yet, as small as we are. Drones, last time I checked, which was about 2 years ago, they'll start off for almost $40,000 and then the training on it. You've actually got to go, the operators actually have to get, it's almost like a pilot's license just to be able to operate one. So it's a long process, but anything's possible in the future. So.
Yeah, it seems like a drone could get from here to anywhere in the city pretty quick.
And do what?
see what's going
At least
on.
observe.
Well, there's a new, I think it's, Prosper, who's looking into having an automatic drone to where it launches off the fire department and it actually will go to the scene of any kind of incident. And it'll actually be able to have eyes on the, on property like right off the bat, so that way we can see what's going on. Whether it's a fire, a traffic accident, or,
I was gonna add to that too, that again, it could even be a joint thing that they're useful on the fire department side as well, if you're looking at a large incident or even just a house fire for sides that you can't see, and you got to keep moving around it, so it works well on both sides, law enforcement and fire side.
we've got kind of other pressing issues that we're trying to deal with right now.
Chief, I had a question about, on your list of citations, there's one 3111, it says display fictitious drivers. What does that mean?
Is that the plates?
It may have been, if is it abbreviated, stuff at driver's thing?
3111, display fictitious drivers.
Driver's license.
Oh,
Yeah.
Officer Warren actually worked that one.
He displayed an international driver's license that we found to be misspelled in several places. It was fake. He bought it online.
Oh, that's right.
He came from Mexico and was told that he had to buy a license. So someone told him that he went online and bought a license for $127. He said that he didn't have a driver's license, so he's stupid.
Thank you, good to know.
I have a similar question on the report there. It says organized retail theft. Is that shoplifting or is that mean, is everybody running in the city and start grabbing stuff, running out with it like they do in New York and San Francisco? Or what is that?
If there's any type of, any of the businesses, or even residential, if there's any type of, criminal activity that involves two or more people, that counts as an organized event.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Any other questions for DPS?
Can I ask a question?
You
The heat report showing the incidents in different colored dots or circles, what do those colors mean? Is it,
The green, basically the more traffic stops there are, and that's basically our hotspot, so if it's red, that means there's more, traffic violation being observed in that area. If we were to put the heat map where the traffic accidents are, it actually lines up with where the guys are, doing traffic enforcement.
so that's kind of the severity of the event?
Yes,
Okay,
that's where more of the traffic violation are observed in the city.
thank you, Chief.
There's nothing else for DPS. Let's go to ambulance service update, please.
Did you?
Sorry, they have it on their drawings.
I was waiting till number 12, sorry. I thought I was second to last.
I think they may have it on their drawings.
It is twice.
You can do it 2 times.
Is it misplaced?
This is the service update, not the ambulance acquisition issue.
All those together.
I'm not sure I understand that.
Well, number 12 is where we actually need the council to take
Action.
action. And he was gonna give a report, but I guess you took it.
Okay, yeah, okay.
Move it to later.
So not 12, this is it, and then 12 is where you take the action.
Unless you want to do it.
Let's do it all.
No, we good
Let's do it
now.
all
We're
once.
good to go.
Okay, that's fine.
We'll change it right now. so
we pull
got
it up?
something for you to know.
I'm already up,
We're gonna do
so
it at the end.
we'll knock it out.
So are we moving 12 up to now?
No, I'm just gonna do the.
Just gonna do the
report.
presentation.
Presentation.
Now and then
Okay.
Let's
we
go
go
to
to
the
that,
agenda.
No, you want, that's
and
it.
then bottom, perfect. Okay, and do you have a clicker or?
This is when it has-
The word.
This is the newest.
All right, we'll see if this works. Thank you, Mayor and Council. Again, so this is just an update on some of the things we've already discussed quite a bit. There hasn't been a lot of changes, so again, it's just some of the stuff we've already kind of gone over before. There is some updated to some pricing. We've got some information on lead times and things like that. So again, to start out, some of our options, to maintain that status quo. Obviously, we discussed the contract with Aubrey is ending, expected to end in September of 26. Some of the issues are we have those expected numbers in the $500,000 to $550,000 range for those agencies, whether it be Aubrey or even Little Elm, expected price ranging to be able to continue to provide us the ambulance service. I would assume that those will change the longer it goes out because they're going to incur additional pricing as well. But right now, those are some of the unofficial numbers that they've discussed with us. If we continue down that road and we just either renew with Aubrey if they're willing to do so, or we venture to another agency, we'll still have some of the similar logistical concerns. That agency's availability, some differences in medical control protocols, time frames, their distance of travel, things like that. So some of that still kind of stays the same whether we go that route or not. Option two, obviously we discussed some of the numbers we were coming up with and some of the direction we were taking, whether that's kind of been reviewed by any sort of consulting firms. We have, next slide will show 3 of those that we have reached out to. They have anywhere from a partial review to a complete review. That partial review is from speaking with them as kind of a consideration and reviewing some of the numbers we've already came up with. And hey, yes, this seems about right. You guys seem on the right track with the number we've already provided them. The complete review is going to go into past records, including those other agency records regarding standards of cover, time travel, response times. It'll go into the city's future plans for growth, budgeting, whole broad analysis. And so that's where you'll see on the next slide, it changes that price range and that time frame. Option 3 would be to go ahead and move forward with the department and the city bringing it into our own house, which would result in getting up-to-date bidding on actual ambulances, hard equipment, starting the paperwork for the licensing to the DEA, to the Texas Department of State Health Services, and all that stuff, start moving forward with that. Myself and Battalion Chief Sansing met with Chief Longbreak of Justin and Ponder the other day. They have jumped just ahead of us in that. They went down this same road. So they're moving along quite a bit on that same task. We'll move to the next one. These are the 3 consulting firms. One of those at the bottom there, Fitch and Associates. They were the ones that did Fort Worth's transition from Fort Worth not being a provider to taking on a provider. Was it AMR or MedStar? So that's an associate or agency that did their review to move into that, and now Fort Worth is doing their own ambulance service. They're also the company that they have the 2 different price ranges there. So that 2 to 4 months correlates to those pricing in regards to that lower prices to review some of the numbers we've already came up with, the direction we were going with it, and kind of determine if everything seems to be we're on track. The other one involved a more in-depth review. That particular associate or agency too, talking with them and with the Michael Rainey Associates, they had comments on the phone of with all the information we had to give them initially just to start a proposal for us, what we have, what our call volume is, current contracting. So basically everything we already know. They had to have all that to give us an accurate estimate or a proposal for what this venture was going to take. In those conversations on the phone, they kind of felt, hey, well, you kind of seem like you're on the right track, but if you want us to dot your I's and cross your T's, we'll be more than happy to.
So question on that consulting service is just the analysis, does that actually come with a product like an implementation?
It would not necessarily, it will come with a recommendation of that, hey, you guys are on track, you should go forward, or we see these issues that you're probably going to run into if you decide to move forward with that. This is a breakdown. So we used June of 23 through May of 24. I wanted to use the last 12 months. This will make a little more sense in the next slide, but it's going to give us actual numbers. And so if you go from, I apologize, I thought it was bigger. If you go June of 23 to May of 24, last 12 months, the very bottom, just button up push for that. So the very bottom there, that's 1,271 calls for that time frame. That's total fire calls for the department. 60% of that is the 760 at the top in that column that is just EMS related. Out of that 760 calls, the 340 next to it is the city EMS calls, and then the 420 beside that are county EMS calls. That correlates, if you go 2 rows down, that's 45% of that 760 and 55% of that 760 right there of the actual EMS calls. County fire calls, that's just kind of there for additional information, as is the monthly average of calls per month. What we really look into it is the 466 under the transported. So those 2 numbers, transported and refusals, correlates to that 760 total call. this gets into when we start looking at options on, or the revenue we'll get back from billing and things like that. And that's why the county and city is separated, because that also has to do with county reimbursement for a medical call versus a fire call. If you notice the 1% in red, that's just so those percentages make sense. That 1% is generally where there's either a deceased person already on scene, they've left by private vehicle already, or that call was miscategorized as a medical call that turned out to be a fire call initially from what we're pulling it as. So it's just a 1%. I think it ended up being 15 calls total out of that 760. Those high lows, I want to put that in there so you see the fluctuation from any given month to any given year as is any given day. If you look at total EMS calls out of those 12 months, the single month that had the most calls was 75. The lowest amount was 46 calls for that month. And then that moves into correlating for whether it was city EMS, county EMS, or fire call, as is the transported as well. And then the percentages there at the bottom just kind of make sense with that total 1,271 calls for the year. Breaks down out of total 27% for EMS, city, 33% for county. And then that 18 is the fire-related calls, which is separate from the EMS. And then this is where some of that will make a little bit of sense. So this is when you're looking at projected costs. This is anticipated for fiscal year 25-26. This would be what we would need to incur on top of an existing budget in order to implement it. This is not necessarily inclusive of operating, but this is implementation for current staffing we have and current options we have. So if we're looking at an ambulance, we're looking at total cost projected $344,000. Chief Sanson's done some footwork on this where we're looking at a 7-year lease, 6 to 7%. So we're looking at an annual payment of $53,000. So that would probably stay, depending on the type of lease we get, whether that stays full that 4 to 7 years, or we have a structure where it might start a little higher, a little lower, or vice versa. The hard equipment is the load equipment, the Lucas device, things like that are hard equipment items from Strikers, our vendor. About $135,000 for those. That would be the same thing. It'd be a lease contract, 6 years, about 7%. So you're looking at an annual payment of $30,000. The big number that's changed from the last time we kind of started this initial is with the anticipation of added staff and to be able to implement this in that time frame and roll with what we have currently with minimal lower staffing on other fire apparatus to run just an ambulance. We've moved that down to 3 personnel to implement this in that fiscal year, the 3 firefighter paramedic positions. So this includes that salary, including benefits, runs up to 273. The other numbers stayed fairly the same because we currently do have an existing budget for medical supplies, but when you add an ambulance, there's going to be either additional calls by that point or additional items that we don't carry on the truck now that are going to be utilized on an ambulance. The training is very similar, ancillary costs, fleet maintenance, again, with the hopes that yes, a new ambulance does not break down. So that's kind of a guesstimate on that. And then the license and regulatory fees would be there. So we're looking at, to be able to implement this in that year, we would need the additional $417,000. The county reimbursement and the insurance estimates at the bottom, I left those blank because currently we have city calls and we have county calls. Currently, as a ALS first responder organization, all of our county calls are paid back at $700 per call from the county. Once we go to a provider, those EMS categorized calls drop down to $250 per call. So using that previous slide with those numbers, at 760, at 1,271 for the year, at 760 EMS calls, and the ones that were for city and county, using those actual numbers, if we've been in this setup already, we would have taken about $128,000 loss on the county reimbursement, but on the option to then bill that we don't have now, we would have an estimated $151,000 then brought in from revenue. Now that's also from speaking with Chief Longbreak, he had said that we are estimating pretty low on what that could potentially be.
It's a conservative.
It is very conservative. So we've taken, another chief has estimated that you take your total EMS calls, you average that about $350 per call. That'll give you either your short pays, no pays, or full pays. That runs about $163,000. If we do it the method Chief Sanson came with, we're talking with Emergicon, which would be our billing agency. They're averaging, your average EMS call is about $1,300 a call. So we're guesstimating a near 25% of that actually gets paid, whether it's only 25% people pay all the $1,300 or everybody pays only 25% of the $1,300. So that brings us to that 151. To stay a little more conservative, we went with that lower number. So those essentially kind of wash out from an existing standpoint on saying what we already operate on as a fire department. The 417 is what it's to take to increase that additional service. So over the next years, depending on how you structure this as you go out, adding a second ambulance, adding other personnel, those could change. Fleet maintenance could go up, other costs may come down. Increased population may increase county calls, so we change some reimbursement there. Historically, Oak Point service areas have a great return on paying their insurance claims. That was part of why the previous contracts with Aubrey were allowed to be so low, is because there was an issue that they were concerned about being able to bill for that call and actually getting that paid. So we do well on paying for our service. So that's kind of the breakdown of that. That was the last slide. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Thank you for the numbers. We've been looking at this for months and months, and it looks like things are getting fine-tuned. It looks very financially doable, and I think it's very positive for Oak Point to have its own ambulance service to provide the best service to the residents of Oak Point. I think you mentioned in the past that Aubrey's getting up to, is it 16, 17 minutes?
Yes, and that is still about that average. Obviously, there's still construction, but there's just going to be increased population. And one of the other factors to include in that is currently, when we first started, not first started, but originally a while back, they were using Station 2, which is a period in Nebo. That station became so busy that their administration had to move it. They decided that they were going to be servicing us with an ambulance from Central, which is in downtown Auburn. That increased a little bit of time frame. The Nebo station is probably no longer going to be their station. They're actually opening another one that's going to be further north. So that could also, even if they went back to saying, hey, we're going to do Station 2, that station is not going to be, it's going to be further north. So we're still going to be in that similar time frame. There's still the issues if we're with Little Elm, the difference in dispatching. So there's a delay there automatically with the two different agencies dispatching, because they each didn't see these different counties. Trying to think if there's something else I want to kind of express, but I don't remember what it was now. It slipped my mind. That's right.
It's okay, you'll get another chance later.
Sure.
These numbers are current prices and values.
This is what we're currently, thank you very much. Brought it back to, we're getting information that there are, I guess, betterments or increases in, not increases, but decreases in delivery time. So if it was something we looked into on equipment and purchasing, we're getting out of that COVID era manufacturing delays. Things are starting to uptick in that as far as the time frame that to start a build. It's getting a little less than 2 years for a truck to be built. We're getting into probably 18 months to less.
So my question is, on these lease costs, that's based on entering into the lease now, or
Correct.
this year,
Correct.
and it holds for when you take delivery, or are there increases?
That would be something we would have to, these are numbers now, again, the fiscal year 25-26 is say, this is what if we started now, we believe we can meet that implementation time, October 1 of 2026.
But are you locking into the lease
That
now, or are
would
you
be
locking into the
something we
lease
have
when
to
you
try to
take
discuss with them and see, and that's not something we have an answer on yet, but that's the anticipation is that, hey, if we're gonna be able to do this, let's find something now that gives us that same pricing. So that 344 doesn't end up 402, 420, 450, as 6 months go back, because several of our providers and different types of equipment suffered several price increases over the last year. And that's, again, we don't know where that'll go with the economy. I would assume everything's gonna increase over time. As to what extent though? If they're offering the same percentages, or if we look at a different lease year time, but I think just the overall price is more likely to change like as is everything else.
So you've not built in anything for potential increases?
This is to use those previous numbers for that call volume to say if we were already in that system with today's pricing, that's what it would cost us. So yes, that 4 number could change by time that the longer you wait on making that decision.
Rolling back to the last slide, you don't have to go back, Joni, but where you're saying county EMS, is that ETJ coverage basically, or is that?
Some of it is actually outside of ETJ as well, but the majority is in ETJ. But yes, anything outside of city limits that's in our designated fire or EMS responsive district through the county, that's where that reimbursement comes.
So currently it comes into us and then to dispatch Aubrey?
Yes, so working through Denton County Sheriff's Office, they're on the same dispatch. So Denton County has it to where if a call comes in by address, by call type, the system automatically generates and recommends Rescue 631, Medic 521, which is their ambulance. So based on the call type, if it's a fire in a certain area, it's predetermined by that. The system says it recommends this engine, this truck, this ambulance, and so on. Same thing with the medical.
So you're getting the first call.
Yes.
I have several questions. I'll see that item 12.
You'll see it later in the agenda.
I got a question I ask.
Very-
So option one, the 550 estimate now. If we were to enter into that contract, how long is that?
Section 52 of the
Contract?
That really hasn't been discussed. That 500 was brought up in a conversation that says, you know what, we could probably go ahead and change it, because obviously they're looking for that funding sooner than later. They would anticipate it and could use it and want it before the end of the contract we currently have. That being said, he has no intention of abandoning us and dropping us. They're gonna live out that contract.
And what is that contract about?
That contract's end of September 26th.
Okay, so if we committed now to this, then approximately when that's over, we'd be stepping in our first day of service right around that time.
That would be the anticipation, will be October 1 of 26, we're on board.
And then if we didn't do that, we decided to go with this contract or something else, then we'd be looking at those numbers starting at that time, or possibly more, because that's a year.
Same thing. If you were to enter with them something else, is okay. If this happens in October 1 of 26, if we're not at this point, this contract will be this. If they want to agree to something and stay at that number, yes, but I would anticipate that would probably, if our prices change, those are going to change. So their cost per call is going to increase as well, I would assume.
Right.
So I would think that they would say, well, you know, I know we talked about this a year and a half ago, but it's going to cost a little more than.
So that cost, they're paying that out, we actually start at that time of the contract. When does this contract start coming up?
This number would be anticipated to be having that 25-26 budget. Now, whether it all comes out in the first month, the third month, 6th month, but that would be the goal from looking at it, would be to try to have that going into where everything, if we had a payment that year, and that might be one of the options, that $53,000 on the ambulance yearly payment, well, if it's in that 25-26, maybe we're closer to the end of that year that we don't have that payment, or there's a prorated payment for that. So that could drop that initial implementation, but obviously that following year would be your lease payment moving forward. So there would probably be a prorated portion to that one, and probably the hard equipment. Staffing, we would probably want to have that covered already. We would want to probably brought them in at least 6 months prior.
Let's say we don't have any of them, we're just looking for, whatever that number is, that's 25-26, we're looking at that outlay, and then in 26, then we're.
The increase to do that would be more than likely how you structured your lease payments, if that increased at all. If you were concerned about any increased vehicle maintenance, that would increase as far as an operational cost versus an implementation cost. And would probably be an additional 3 on top of that, 3 personnel on top of that. Now, we could probably work, because we're subsidizing that. We don't have to have 2 fire paramedics on the ambulance. We have existing firefighter EMTs that can fill that second spot.
But ultimately, we'd like to keep the staffing levels that we have now, and be able to.
Right. The point of the staffing increase would particularly be due to be able to not understaff other units. So by that point, we have the numbers to still have the battalion chief, a 3-man as opposed to a 2-man engine, a 2-man rescue with the new rescue that's coming in, as opposed to not being able to run it, and 2 men on an ambulance. That also gives us the opportunity, and then as you go down the road, if we're looking into a second ambulance, because it's advisable to have a reserve. So when yours goes down, you're not unserviceable. So that comes into where if we did run into a dual call, say we're sitting there and we have the staffing that's staffing the rescue and the ambulance and the engine, ambulance goes out on one call, second one comes in back to back, we can always down staff the rescue and they can jump on and still take that call, as opposed to not having it and then mutual aiding. But that's also an upside to not only us, but to our fellow neighbors, is that we then really truly join into a mutual aiding system. What they can give us, we can give them back. So there will still be the expectation. There may be times when you still see an Aubrey ambulance, a Little Elm ambulance in the city, or you may see ours in one of their cities. But that puts us into the actual intent of that helping hand.
Two more questions then. That second ambulance, when was that coming into play?
That's discussion. I would anticipate at least planning on starting to build within then, so you still have your time delay, so possibly 18 to 24 months, give or take after that. Another budget or so after that, give or take. That's easily something that's workable, because with that, those numbers and staffing, we can do it. We want to make sure you're obviously constantly trying to make sure you're available for service, not barely able to service.
So the second question then, whenever we look at that second ambulance, then what are we looking at adding to the budget to be able to add that yearly?
I would say similar cost, if you use these numbers, it would double, obviously, the annual lease payment on the top two, the staffing, depending on if you needed to increase that staffing. The other stuff, I don't believe we would necessarily need to increase those because we would probably already have the soft equipment. There might be a minimal increase in that because again, that ambulance isn't running all the time, so you're not counting what they use. You're having to just a little bit of cost to load it, and essentially it's there in reserve. So it's not running call after call after call using those soft supplies, so you're not having to replace some soft supplies as often.
But nonetheless, in order to have a second ambulance, we're looking at fairly significant costs to get that on board and keep an operation.
Less than current, but yes, by that point,
Yeah, so
3,
not
4,
double
5
that,
years.
but we're significantly, maybe 75% of that or whatever on top of it regularly.
And it doesn't mean you have to have a second, it's advisable, it's advisable, but I mean, obviously you can run as a one ambulance city.
But then given that, if we were to do this with the one ambulance versus the service that we would be paying for over the contractual period, we'd be getting actually better service because we have it ourselves, we'd be getting the same quantity of service, and we have it at a better time.
I would argue better quality of service.
Well,
That's
that's a given.
debatable. Yeah, but that is the main point is that there's the control or the authorization you have in the decisions that are made in the system. It's not work at whoever decides to do our, the perfect example, we're gonna send you station 2 4 miles down the road, we're gonna move to station 1 7 miles down the road. We've added 3 minutes to your time response. That's the decisions you get to avoid having to deal with. So,
Thank you very much.
you bet.
Any other questions for Chief Earl?
No, this one.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Agenda item number 8, report from council liaison. A, update on the park July meeting. Scott?
Okay, so main thing is still going on, pickleball courts. Still don't have any documents for bidding. Has that changed, Stephen?
No, we still don't have them.
Still, what could possibly be taking so long?
I don't know.
Okay. So their budget, Parks budget was approved, except they added $10,000 for a green catchment system, or possibly consultant. And a motion was made to add $75,000 for some kind of a shade apparatus for the playground. That did not get approved. That's about it.
Thank you, Scott. B, update on the Economic Development Corporation July meeting. Greg, please.
Thank you, Mayor. We had a lively discussion around budgets for both the MDD and the EDC. Budgets were passed as presented by staff for the most part. There were a couple of adjustments made to consider acquiring some additional or replacement trade show booth equipment as we ramp up our efforts to market Oak Point at the various trade shows. Sign project still ongoing. Signs were due to be installed sometime during the month of June and have not yet been installed, so we're still waiting that. And then there was a bit of a lively discussion around the joint commercial corridor character code reformatted meetings. The general feeling was that the meeting was more productive because we had everybody in one place at one time and could make their voices heard. Essentially, the EDC once again urged staff to prevail upon half to ensure that we are focused on the areas of the commercial corridor that are coming out fastest and to try and find a way to communicate with any developers that are ahead of our curve, what's coming, what our desires are and how we can hopefully engage them to align with what our vision is. So that's really where that's at.
Thank you, Greg. Consent agenda, agenda item number 9, consider and act upon the minutes for the June 18th, 2024 joint City Council, Economic Development Corporation, and Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, and the June 5th, 17th, and 26th, 2024 City Council meetings. Number 10, consider an act to approve a resolution authorizing the Director of Public Safety to enter an interlocal agreement with Denton County for the use of Denton County radio communication system for the fiscal year 2024 through 2024. Sorry.
It should be 25.
It should be 25, right? Okay, through 25. Thank you. Council, would you like to pass the consent agenda in its entirety, or do you wish to pull an item for discussion?
I'll explore that for possible edit. That would be the minutes.
We made several edits, so let me know which minutes. They may already be corrected in here.
Okay, do the 26th, council meeting on 26th.
Yeah,
Can you bring that up, please?
yes. Is it the second page there, the number 10?
No, it's actually one above that.
Okay. Do you know which item?
I know, back down, right down. Hold on. What was it? Or something, I wanted a session at 6 o'clock, but then we went in session at a different time frame. We already
Yes,
fixed
and
that.
that was the one we corrected. That was item 10.
Okay, so I found it.
Yeah. So it's corrected on here.
No further questions?
Okay, so do you still need to vote, or do you?
No, if it's fixed, I make a motion to approve consent agenda as stated.
We have a motion by Councilmember Lutz, and we have a second by Councilmember Bastage. Any further discussion? If not, we'll vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. The motion passes unanimously. Regular agenda, item 11, consider an act to amend Chapter 12, Article 12.03 of the city's speed limit ordinance. City Attorney, please.
Good evening. What you have in front of you is an ordinance that we discussed at this last meeting, in that state law lays out a presumption of a prima facie speed limit of 30 miles per hour in an urban district. The code had a ordinance provision that said that the prima facie speed limit was 40. This ordinance as drafted would change that to reflect state law that the prima facie speed limit is 30. And then you have to set other speed limits by ordinance. And so in other areas of the city where, for example, a 35 zone in Martingale, that is put into the ordinance in section 12-03-034. And then there's a 40 zone section of the ordinance for 5 streets, Marta, McCormick, Shaken Prairie, Naylor, and Yacht Club Road. This ordinance does not change any of the speed limits out there, just the prima facie speed limit. And it's the 35 and 40 zones that are reflected in the ordinance are hopefully how it exists out on the road today. There's not changes being made. So yeah, the ordinance just, in my view, is a cleanup provision. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
So the existing speed limits are 20, or we don't have to discuss or make notes.
No, yeah, this is just establishing the 35, the 40, and establishing a prima facie at 30. If there's other posted limits such as 25, that's pursuant to state law. So the 20, are you referring to school zones?
No, I'm referring to a curve on Second Riverside Boulevard.
Okay. Well, that's still, that's still in effect, given the posted speed limit.
It was a blind curve, so they had a 20
20,
on
okay.
Devon Sound Boulevard and
No,
that.
that's right, now you think about it, yeah.
only guy that does 20. Probably that's what we probably does.
So, yeah, that's pursuant to the posted sign.
Do you have a question? Ken?
Cute little graphic on it. You're saying all that, like, for example, McCormick, Martop, Barnville, all East West, they're all the same as they are now. It's just,
Yeah, this is not changing any of the existing speed limits out on the road. This is really an ordinance, kind of the status quo,
nowhere in
other than the prima facie speed limit going from 40 to 30.
nowhere in the city does the speed limit get over 40.
I mean,
It's not 720.
yeah, besides
Oh,
that,
that's state
720,
highway,
yeah.
What's that?
That's state highway.
Yeah, I understand.
They set that speed limit.
So is there a particular reason that we're naming those streets? Is it because it's over 30?
Well, typically cities would name, because you have prima facie speed limits set by state statute, by state law. If you want to vary from the prima facie speed limits, then it's typically presented or ordinance. And so you list out those sections of the road from, this intersection to this intersection, it's 40, 45, whatever that is. And so the best practice is to, by ordinance, establish, where those zones exist.
Question for DPS. Do you think we can put out some of these electronic, you're going too fast signs, radar signs, or whatever, don't we have one or two of those?
We do have two of them, like we actually are rotating them Mondays and Thursdays as different locations. Unless the citizen asks us for a specific street that people are speeding on, we'll put it there.
If I understand it correctly, the primary goal of this is to drop the speed limits down a little bit in the two big zones. What's wrong?
It would be for the unposted areas where our ordinance says the presumption is it's 40.
So this would meet the state
This is saying
statute.
it's 30 in those unposted areas. The prima facie speed limit would be 30
I understand.
for those urban
Those
districts.
unposted areas, Emerald Sound, and Eagles Landing,
I mean, it's essentially the neighborhoods.
Anyway. And with the neighborhoods, the 30 mile speed limit would be
right.
the required speed limit by the state statute instead of the 40 that we currently have in our ordinance. And I'd like to make a motion to amend chapter 12, article 12.03 of the city speed limit ordinance.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilmember Baskovich. We have a second by Councilmember Lusk. Is there any further discussion?
Yeah, I just have one question. So, there's apparently speed limit signs that had existed in Emerald Sound. A couple of folks have made mention that they're gone. Is that the case? Did some signs have come down? I don't know if it's the case.
We haven't taken any signs down, no.
If a citizen requests a sign to be put up to hopefully deter speeding,
Yeah, they,
looking at that, would consider that.
Yeah.
Just, okay. Get a feel for that, that's all. That's all I have, thank you.
Any other discussion? If not, we'll vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. The motion passes unanimously. Agenda item 12, consider an act to give direction to staff to move forward with an ambulance service.
can you pull that
You
presentation
want to come
back?
back, Chief Roach?
Can you pull his presentation back up?
Always find a way to kind of throw a monkey wrench in the middle of something.
We might need to hear something more than once, so thank you for being flexible. Was there anything that you
It's
didn't
that first
present
slide, second
previously, or
slide.
anything you want to accentuate or want us to
Next one.
focus on?
Like that one.
No, I feel I've provided you the most information we can and our opinions of where we think we should be going. We're willing to go whichever direction you give us.
I have a question. This is kind of maybe for Stephen and others. Have we looked at other cities that have done this recently, like Kansas, the so-called other 5,000-ish type, old place type cities, and see how they've done it, or have we done it? Which path they took, kind of.
So we're not alone. I think it's Crum. Crum is in the same situation we are, and they've already actually ordered their ambulance. They're moving theirs into the city as well. So.
That was part of that ponder and Justin with the Chief Long Break, because they were experiencing exceptionally long wait times on an ambulance to get to their city, so they moved into that. They're eventually trying to move into an ESD. They are particularly, but that's why they ventured into that as well. It's just the logistics of we're waiting for an ambulance to get here now and need to provide our citizens with the service.
Have you been able to obtain any budgeting information from Crum or?
Not directly from them. We haven't got to that point because it didn't, I haven't looked into that with the sense of not feeling like what would make a difference if I'm looking at theirs, because then I have their overall number with their costs and I have our overall number with our costs.
Just in terms of the lease costs and things like that, I would think that there'd be.
Well, that we would continue. If that's the direction we're given, that we would continue to look down that road. Instead of taking the time to contact a bunch of different agencies right now, whether it's government capital, and that's for further discussion, depending on if you choose that direction to go, there should be more discussion on how we get there. So then that's going to be require more direction from you guys, and that's some discussions with Stephen, whether we're looking at taking on some debt, how we're achieving that number.
So that was going to be my question, is if we, as the agenda item states, give direction to staff to move forward, how do you define that? What are your next steps?
I would say that would put us into having those conversations, figuring out how we're paying for it. If we move to that option, where that money's coming from, what's the structure, how we're gonna put that into the budget and the steps into it. Once that's determined, then we move forward with reaching out to the different vendors. We have a couple different providers. Like I said before, the lead times or wait times on a bill is getting shorter. So there's some different options with different providers as far as ambulance builders. Whether we stick with Fraser, which is what we've looked at, some of the beginning ones with the international chassis. It's a lot bigger unit, but now Chevys and Fords are coming back into play and being more available. So there's a cost difference there, possibly higher or lower. Ride is a difference. There's a difference in riding an international ambulance and riding an ambulance. So we'll look more into that on which vendor we go with, what some of the different pricing options there. We have an option that's not necessarily certified through some of the standards of a lot of ambulance manufacturers, but they have one available at $230,000 range.
So there's a great deal more analysis.
There could be a little bit, yes, on those numbers. That was with what numbers we've looked at, because
So assuming we figure out how it's gonna be paid for, budgeting and all that, how much lead time do you expect to need till you come back?
I would say if we determine
this is the spectrum of decision making that we've gotten to, and these are our options, and we're ready to make a decision on which vehicle to choose and get it on order.
I would say within a couple months or two, the numbers we went with were with things that we determined that would be our like. So the number is from a Fraser ambulance on a Ford chassis. That's a preferred. So, but we can bring more numbers, and I would say within a month or so, we can have those numbers and say, okay, if we determine how we're paying for it, where we're going to adjust that from, here's the options for the one we would like. It's one of those. The hard equipment would be the same. The other stuff would be that's the only one that would really change mostly, because those other ones are pretty standard, already priced out.
Chief Roach, the motion says to move forward with an ambulance service. That appears to correspond with option number 3. Is that correct? Where you're continuing to gather information and analysis? I
would say yes, to get us forward to that, to move. That's the option we pick. We've now gotten a green light to move forward with moving in that direction. Because we've ordered status quo, we've decided not on option 2. We're now going to start getting more bids on actual units, and then the discussions on where to structure that into the budget. And then, of course, the licensing then too, the paperwork has to go through the state health agency and the DEA's office for narcotics, things like that.
There's a lot of work to do.
Yes.
So yeah, if you guys want us to move forward with EMS needs, and then Gary would need to start up with the licensing portion of it. Obviously, we would have to go through with some sort of lease purchase option with someone like a government capital or one of those agencies, and we'd have to bring forward to you those contracts for approval with those guys as well. So y'all would see those for the contracts for the ambulance, for the contracts for the equipment. Y'all would see all the information.
So what's your sense of lead time, Steve?
Before we're up and going, or how much time do we need to get started?
Well, I mean, till when you're ready to come back and say, we've got everything in place.
We would need 2 months,
Ready
I
to make a
think.
decision.
The first thing we need to order the ambulance because it's got the longest lead time. So we need to get on that pretty quick.
And some of it may be segmented. So, for example, ordering the ambulance first and then
Ambulance is
Other
number,
things to follow.
that's a 14 to 16 month build time. So we need to order that pretty quick. So we need to get our numbers together with them. I don't know if that's a deposit to get them to get started on the ambulance, and I would prefer that it would be because I think interest rates are going to come down a little bit. We'll have to talk to Government Capital and Fraser or whoever we choose to build the ambulance. But we need to do that probably within the next couple of months.
When's the next budget meeting?
I'm sorry?
When's our budget?
Yeah, so this wouldn't even hit this year's budget. This would be falling into next year's budget. By the time any of these payments or any of that stuff started rolling around, it wouldn't be in this fiscal year. So,
So no more,
Jim, something, Chief?
go ahead.
I built in on those figures, Government Capital gave me a rough interest rate of 6.1%. They did indicate to me that as we got closer to November, that there is a good chance that those rates would come down due to it being an election year. But the 6.1% was kind of a middle of the road average, what I got with different people that I did speak with. And that's the number that I used when I built the pricing. As far as now, what I want to kind of clarify is on the price of the ambulance, that is a payment, that is not a lease. That ambulance becomes ours at the end of that 7 years. It is not a lease to where it has to be returned at the end. It is actually physical finance. Much like you make a monthly payment on your car, we would make a yearly payment on that ambulance, and that's 7 years, it becomes our property.
it's like we did with the fire truck. We actually financed a piece of that fire truck through Government Capital.
Chief, I'm sorry, don't mean to interrupt, but Chief, remind me, isn't there some type of grant funding? And maybe I'm mixing apples with oranges, but wasn't there some kind of grant funding possibly available to offset some of this cost?
I don't know that we have that on the EMS side. The training,
The last thing that any kind of substantial grant that came through was CARES Act money back when the height of COVID-19 was going. However, that is long since expired and not available.
I heard something.
no, I think I remember, you're right. I think what we were talking about before was the SAFER grant. That was going back into the staffing side of it. So yes, we are still pursuing that. If we move forward, that is still plan to pursue that.
Okay.
It's in the books to sunset soon, but there's not a lot of anticipation that they're actually going to set it. They're actually going to probably continue that. So there's a hopeful chance that, yes, we can still apply for that, and then that takes on that staffing side that covers their salary for 3 years. So that's still something we're pursuing, and we have the intent to try to pursue that with approval anyways, just to staff even without an ambulance, because based on FPA 1710 standards, we still fall understaffed in some areas.
Thank you. I think most of us agree that an ambulance service is a necessity coming forward as we move forward. And I don't know, do we need a motion on this, Mayor?
It's an action. Yes, we do need a motion.
I'd like to make a motion to act to give direction to staff to move forward with an ambulance service.
Is there a second?
A second.
But what is the direction?
For clarification, yeah. there's two-
Option 3.
The direction would be to move forward with ambulance service implemented under the city's authority. And so us running the ambulance.
Okay, so the two
What
options.
gets us moving forward, Scott? We gotta start ordering things if we're gonna
Yeah,
start.
no,
moving.
I'm totally for it. Last thing I want to do is hire another consultant to slow everything down.
No, this is an option 2. So,
Yeah, so the options, the items that are listed in the agenda, item number 12 in the packet. Say there's option 1, we're looking at option 2, with a consultant firm.
Yeah, and I thought about that after the fact. I did, and that in the agenda was option 1 and option 2, and it appears 2 and 3. But the option is either 1 would be to have consultants review everything first, we'll make a decision whether we should do it or not.
So
Option 2 is then to move forward with us implementing ambulance service under Oak Point.
So for clarification, when we're saying yes to this, we're saying we're allowing you to make that decision.
I think you're directing us to take that avenue
Okay, that's
too.
what I want to clarify. So if I'm going to direct you to take that decision, than two things. We're paying potentially $20,000 to $40,000 to consulting firm for 2 to 3 months of time before we get there.
Yeah, that would not be the decision I would be asking you to
Well,
go.
I
in
understand
direction.
it. What I'm saying is that's what it says in the agenda.
And it might be just a wording issue.
I'm just clarifying it. Or we're moving forward on our own, making our own
Correct,
decisions.
where we start looking at proposals for actual bids on ambulances for the builds, and then start anticipating where the rest of that funding comes from with the anticipation of implementing by the end of the contract period with our current service provider.
Well, I'd like to see, since this is kind of confused already somewhat, I'd like to see the motion amended to more clearly state that it's our own deal, we're not using consultants.
I agree.
Move that to amendment to a motion or
Or
not?
do I need to rescind my second?
Rescind your
Let's
sec, yeah,
have the
rescind your
recommendation,
second,
please.
and Paul, if you want to restate the motion.
I'll restate the motion to act, to give direction to staff to move forward with the ambulance services under the option of no consultation and option 3.
Thank you.
Send by the way.
Yes.
Okay, we have a motion.
Motion.
So,
Say we have a motion, we'll need a second.
We have, because it's been
I'll second
amended.
that again.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, we have a motion, an amended motion by Councilmember Bastage, and we have a second from Councilmember Horatio. Is there any further discussion before we vote?
yes. But it's important, I don't think it's critical here at the voting point, but it's important to me that we get some kind of Gantt chart, overall big schedule, timing, that kind of thing, as soon as possible, so we can see how this is gonna lay out, how we're gonna support ambulance service in the meantime, so we'll give that advice, which is pretty obvious, but I want to make sure it's clear.
I agree, John. I think that should be included.
The timeline of the steps to get to that point.
Right.
Many of them fall together at the same time because the paperwork's submitted, and then it's just a matter of waiting on state and DEA and things, so that's kind of something that gets put in, and then we're just waiting on everything else is built.
Would you like to see that? Next meeting, 2 meetings?
I think we're in that by
Next
next month.
Yeah.
Next month, we'll have you some proposals for the company to purchase the ambulance from.
And he's
No, this is the
interested in-
Gantt chart. We'll do
Okay.
Gantt chart.
Great, thank you. We'll vote, if nothing else, we'll vote. I'm sorry, could I interrupt you?
Nothing further.
We will vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes unanimously.
Get going with it.
Thank you.
Thanks for your
Thanks,
hard work.
Chief.
Agenda item 13, discuss and provide direction to city staff regarding topics for the fall 2024 edition of the Country Place Bulletin. Joni?
Okay, well, it's that time again. And we will begin working on our fall newsletter. Councilmember Duffer, Mayor Pro Tem Duffer is going to do the front page for us this time. We will be highlighting the garage sale, community garage sale, community cleanup. That's going to be October 5th and October 12th. And we'll have, the usual things that we have on. I believe the police department is going to have calling it Shadowy Spectacular
Yes.
for Halloween or on October 25th, so we'll have something in there about that.
Do we know the location?
We're bringing it back to our parking lot that we had done before.
Great.
Any suggestions? We'd love to hear your suggestions now.
The fall runs from when to when?
I would like to have this in mailboxes the first week of September, and then I think,
And the next edition comes out when, John?
I think the other one is the winter one, and I think I try to get that out at the beginning of December. That doesn't always happen.
Well, no, the only reason I say that, I would include the Vets Day ceremony that we normally do.
Oh, that'd be
Yes.
great.
And make sure that's entered in there so they get a lot of notice, we get more participation.
Right.
And maybe, just maybe, we can get some of the quilts of honor, maybe somebody identified or a couple identified veterans to be quilted by the quilts of honor.
Thank you, that's a great idea.
Yeah, we've got that on there for Veterans Day.
Thank you.
So between now and when the newsletter comes out, Lower Stokoe will be open. Would it be appropriate to maybe make a note of that, and I like that our first sit-down restaurant in Oak Point is now in operation.
Yes.
And I'm not sure how we would attack this or how much we want to talk about, but I think it'd be great to update everyone on just where we are with the commercial corridor character code process. I know we don't want to get into too many specifics, but maybe we could give it some PR and make sure that people are interested and excited about it.
Good idea.
Maybe somebody from EDC might like to maybe write a little something.
Perhaps, or maybe half would help us with that.
Would it be timely to do a update for roads? Or will there not be enough going on at that time?
I think we could do an update and just saying that we've let some engineering projects, and because I don't know that everyone knows really what we've done and what we're planning on covering.
We're right on McCormick.
Right.
A lot of folks are talking about the flags, what flags for, what's going on out there.
Yeah.
Complaining things about it.
I've already written my thing, and I did include a little bit of that in mine, so I want to get redundant. Chops pull mine out or something. But
I'll look and see what you got and try not to make sure we get too redundant. Ours may be a little more generic. So.
We want to remind everybody of the speed limits.
Oh yeah, we might remind everybody that.
If that's all we have, then we're going to close session. Agenda item number 14, recess into closed session in compliance with section 551.001 et sec, Texas Government Code, to wit, A, section 551.072, real property, to deliberate purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property. B, section 551.074, personnel matters, to deliberate appointments to the Zoning Board of Adjustments, Economic Development Corporation, Municipal Development District Board, Parks and Recreation Commission, and Planning and Zoning Commission. At this time, 7:07, we are going into closed session.
He's about to go in last. I don't know.
David.
Sorry, I'm spelling it in.
No, you're crystal fine there.
From Johnny. I think he's staying.
Pizza waiting for me.
Go ahead.
I got a text message saying, oh, we're gonna do it tomorrow. Just order pizza.
I wonder if we just unplug it. Unplug that.